Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the indicator focus group for indicator 11, Child Find, which is timely initial evaluations. For those of you that could join us, thank you. We are going to be recording this session, so you will get it a little bit later. If you miss anything, you'll also get a copy of the slides and resources that we talk about, and we'll share it out to any districts who may have missed. So for today, some of the areas we're going to focus on will include accessing the special education profile, if you haven't already, review of the timeline for indicator 11, the indicator overview. We're going to dive into submitting data reporting error verification forms, completing the self-review summary report, and completing the improvement plan. We'll also look at some systemic improvement, evidence of completion of your improvement plan activities, and then we'll wrap up with some tips for meaningful and successful indicator required action, and just some next steps so that we're all on the same timeline, and make sure that we have all of our due dates recorded and our team in place. To get started, we are going to go through how to access your special education profile. I think most of you have already done this, so this is the slide that tells you how to do that. We're going to pull one up here in just a second for you so you can see what it looks like and where we need to click for more information, how to access the manual for indicator 11. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do that, I hope. We're going to look at some indicator 11 specific timelines. Because you know it always works the first time, right? I'm going to stop sharing just for a second. I can pull it up. Okay. So on the Ohio ID, once you log in, which it's linked on the slide that you'll get, you will go down. You may have more or less icons than I do, and you'll go to the special education profiles and ratings. And it's going to log me back in anyway. All right, they have loaded a sample district for us to look at. So instead of pulling up any one district, I'm going to pull up the sample, but you would just click your district. Of course, that's probably what you have. And then on this side where it says special education profile, you'll click on that. And then we'll just scroll down and we will find indicator 11. So on this sample, we see indicator 11 for Child Find, which is timely initial evaluation. The target for this one is always 100%, and this rating came up at 92.31, so it's not met. When we see the plus sign and more information, that's where we click, and it'll give us an overview. It also will show us some trend data that we can look at about when we were hit 100%, what the difference was throughout the year. So this looks like last year for our sample, they had made some gains, we're at 100%, but they didn't sustain it this year. So just to make note, remember that indicator 11 measures the percentage of children with parental consent to evaluate whose initial evaluations were completed within 60 calendar days. And all of this is pulled from EMIS, and just that the denominator represents the number of children with parental consent for initial evaluation, and the numerator is the number of those who were completed within 60 calendar days. And we're going to look at that in the manual in just a second. So when you scroll down through where you, in this area where we did the plus sign for more information, we see the action statement and the exact breakdown of what I just explained to you for the child find. We then see the first timeline, which we're going to walk through, which is the data reporting error for verification. And the due date for that, because I know a few of you feel that this might be an error, if you are completing that data reporting verification, that is due February 10th. So that's the first timeline that we'll want to make note of. A couple of you have asked if I submit that, then I'm good. So just to go a little bit deeper with that, if you have a verified data reporting error, so if you submit and they say, oh yes, this was a reporting error, you still have to do the self-review summary report, and it explains that in this section. You will still do an improvement plan, and those dates are March 31st. And then if you already know that it wasn't a data reporting error and you just need to proceed on, then it gives you the timeline for the self-review summary report, their improvement plan, and the systemic improvement, which we're going to talk about. Just a reminder, when you are working through your indicators and doing the work, always go to the work, to this timeline or to this document and the more information to download your self-review summary report and an improvement plan. Sometimes there are changes that occur. So if you've downloaded it in the past, or even maybe at the beginning of when this was released to you on January 5th, I would just say when you do get ready to work on it, you come back and you download it. I'm going to scroll up just for a minute. When you click on this one, you will see that there's a direct link for the Indicator 11 manual. So if you click on that, it will download a Word document where you can see the manual for Indicator 11. And I believe I'm going to turn this over to Holly. But as I'm doing that, just the first few slides that we've showed you that went over how to log in and that kind of stuff, it's all listed here. And then we're going to look at the specific timeline and the other documents.
Bear with me here. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's try this. There we go. All right, so Lydia just had us in the manual, and this is one of the slides, and you'll notice throughout the presentation that we just really snipped a lot of the information directly from the documents that are in your profile, just so that it would prevent us from going back and forth between the two. So within the manual, you'll find all of those different levels of required actions for Indicator 11, which as you scroll through there in terms of the manual, it is a little daunting whenever you look at all the different aspects. So there's the verification process for data reporting errors that Lydia showed you in the profile. They all align. There's the districts with verified data reporting errors, districts with non-compliant timelines, and then districts with data reporting errors and non-compliant timelines. So all of those same aspects are in the manual that were in the profile. And this is actually taken directly from the manual itself, just to give you kind of a quick snapshot of the indicator requirements. When you look under the what, those are kind of the big items that we're going to take a little closer look at. But as Lydia referred to that February 10th, if the district thinks that there is a data reporting error, that's kind of the due date. And that next big due date would be March 31st, where the self-review summary report and improvement plan, and then the improvement plan need to be submitted. And kind of at the far right corner, what I like, or right hand column, is the different places where you're going to upload documents or send notifications. So then the last bit is all around systemic correction. So you can see where the worksheet or statement regarding initial evals that would take place between those due dates of 4/3 or through 6/5. And then making sure that if we had non-compliant timelines, there are record items that we need to consider, as well as the very last item of all of the evidence that we end up generating from our improvement plan activities are due. So this is a slide, if you have a good way to kind of track all of your timelines or your calendar items, this would kind of be one of those very first things that I would kind of keep track of. So data reporting error verification, as Lydia said, it looks or sounds like some of you have already been through this process. So if we're thinking we have an error, we're going to make sure that we use the student record submission form, which I believe we have in the next slide, just for you to have a visual. Some of these forms, if you have more than one indicator, they all kind of start running together and looking the same. So I think half the battle is just kind of working through the documents. So we're going to make sure that for that one record that many of you have, if you're thinking it's an error, we're going to include it on that record submission form. And that's what you're going to submit. You're going to hit the submit button, which is kind of listed here. And that's going to generate this email that will go to the OEC profile, ohio.gov. And then you're going to submit for that particular student record through the doc upload site, which is the secure site, because now we're starting to deal with some of those records that have more of the personally identifying information. You can see all of the different documents that you're going to send, the consent, the cover page, section 5, or the signature page. You're going to have potentially other documents such as or documents that kind of outline those non-compliance codes of parent choice, parent refused consent, child's health, or preceding event that was not reported correctly. And then the very last item under E, other acceptable documentation. So you see that OP09, which is the attempts to contact form, and then any other information that you might have through an email notice, other types of notes or letters are listed there. Non-compliant timelines for excusable reasons are going to be treated as a data reporting error. And they just verify that since they should have been reported with an applicable non-compliance code is why they're considering it a data error. And then OEC will verify and approve any of those data reporting errors before you're going to take those next steps. So again, that's only in the event that you think it's an error. All right, and so this is the actual data error verification form. And you'll see the submit button at the top, which was referred to, that will send an email to the OEC profile. You'll see where you'll mark indicator 11, and then it gives you some verification instructions. The data reporting errors are specific to entering incorrect data into EMIS. And then in order to substantiate that error, you're going to provide documentation, and then you're going to clearly illustrate the specific data error and provide evidence. And so if you're questioning it, I know last year guidance that we received from Shauna, and instead of trying to figure out, is it specifically a data error? If you're not sure, using this format to kind of describe in detail what you're thinking the error is, as opposed to trying to contact her directly, just because of the abundance of calls and so forth. And then below it just talks about signing the form in terms of the acknowledgement by the district that the district has made data reporting errors that contributed to being flagged. Information and all supporting documents are accurate and complete. And then if the district's reporting error is verified, it goes on to clarify that the district will complete all required activities for the indicator as outlined, kind of as Lydia alluded to earlier. And then the district will receive a lower score for timely and accurate data. And then the next page is just capturing those signatures. And then this is actually the actual record submission form. And you can see that the student records are uploaded to the secure data site using the doc upload site. So these will be for the individual records that we're questioning. And then they just kind of go in detail in terms of the submission, submit one form per indicator. And if you had multiple records, you would list them all here, but it sounds like most of you just have one. And we're going to submit student records to the secure site. Again, this is all if you think you have a data verification error. You're going to review the manual for required record items, making sure that all documents are signed. And again, this form is used for multiple indicators, is why they are a little bit redundant or general in their descriptions here. And then you're going to save items as one file per student, and you're going to name the file using the student record number. And they kind of give you an example here of how you would reflect that. And then you're going to upload each of the students' records as one file. And again, they give you that secure doc upload site. And regardless of whether or not you have a verified finding or not, or a verified record for reporting errors, you'll still complete the self-review summary report. There is one difference if you do have verification that it was a data reporting error. This time, or in that process or that instance, the SST is not required to be part of the development of the self-review summary report in the improvement plan. But for all other cases, if it's not a verified data reporting error, then we know that the SST must be involved in that process. And so here is just the cover page of the self-review summary report. And it talks about your district self-review team in terms of who will be involved to kind of go through all of the different questions that are kind of grouped by topic. And we'll kind of pull up the documents so that you can see a little more specifically what those topics are. And I'm not quite sure if all of you have had an opportunity to kind of look more specifically into the self-review summary report, but this is directly from the profile. And again, Lydia kind of talked about this earlier, where they want to make sure that you're utilizing those forms as they're embedded in your profile. But if we scroll down here, there are directions or guidelines for the self-review summary report in terms of completion. And the guiding questions, as we kind of referred to, are broken into topics. If you would have a confirmed or a verified data reporting error, you would start with or move through section A. And you can see that there's questions around general issues reports for the first topic. The second topic is district practices regarding to data reporting. a third question under section A, which is the final question, district training and technical assistance. And a lot of that is geared towards EMIS and how we report things. If we look at section B, these are for districts who are found to be non-compliant. And so we look at topic. This first topic in item number 4 is a reflective process. And you're completing items 4A through 4E if you had required actions for the indicator within the past 3 profile years. So I think most of you, I don't think that any of you had a finding in indicator 11 last year, if I'm remembering correctly. So you would jump down to topic 5, which is process for referral and special education assessment. And you can see some of the guiding questions there. This document is ready to type in. So if you like this format, you can start typing into it right away. The data summary section is the next column. So as you go through each one of these topic areas, what you will do is then kind of culminate a summary based on all of the information that you have discussed as a team. And just while we're here, I'm going to cover these sections and we'll talk more about your team. There's also a section for areas of concern on the form. After you've really looked at your data, you will identify if it's a specific area of concern by marking yes or no. Then there's a section for root cause. And for any column or any information that is considered to be an area of concern, then we're going to complete a root cause. We'll talk a little more about the different tools that we have for root cause and different methods that district teams could use. And then this very last column is a column for identifying priorities for those particular sections that we have concerns around. Scrolling down for the other topics, there's compliance to the 60-day timeline, item 6, item 7, which is I almost pass this up every time I look at it, is options to ensure that families have multiple opportunities to participate in those team meetings for our evaluation. And then topic 8 is all around staff training, policies, procedures, and practices. We know many of you have been engaging in kind of updating your special education procedures. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top here with me and just kind of go back to some of these directions, making sure that we didn't miss anything, but we already talked about the topics in step 1. But as your team, thinking about who's going to be on your team, since this is all around those timely evaluations, thinking about all of those team members who would be part of monitoring those timelines to make sure that everything's kind of moving forward within that 60-day timeline. So it could be your intervention specialist, maybe your school psych, your related service providers, building principals. And, we talked earlier about if it's a verified data error report issue, then it's going to be involving your EMIS coordinator. So that helps to kind of think through who's going to be on your team when you kind of review the content of the questions for each one of those topic areas, and who you want to think about and inviting and including. And of course, a member of the SST is required if you have a non-compliance error. That second piece just really talks about all of the data that you're going to be collecting around your current practices and systems for evaluations, and answering all of the questions. And this process looks different in terms of how you go about getting some of that information maybe prior to your team meeting. We know some districts will actually send out the questions to those individuals who are going to be part of your collective team, just so that they're familiar with what the questions are. We've had some districts create a Google Doc to have individual participants on your team respond to some of those questions if they know the answer prior to the team meeting, so that then that data could be analyzed, or that time spent when you're together analyzing more of the data that's already been inputted. So just so you know that that can look a little bit differently based on your local needs. Step 3, once the district team, including the SST, have reviewed all of those the information from all those questions that have been answered, you're going to use the data summary box, which we highlighted when we went through the different topics. And you're going to use that box to kind of summarize all of those district practices around that particular topic area, which actually could be contributing to your non-compliance. Item 4, if it's an area of concern, like we mentioned earlier, then you'll include or mark yes in the green area of concern box. And if you think it's a strength, then we're going to type no. And then you'll have a chance to prioritize later in the process those areas of concern. And then for answers that are marked no, you're going to leave the root cause box blank. Otherwise, you're going to continue to the next set of data gathering questions. And then for those areas of concern, we're going to make sure that we utilize a root cause analysis method. This is not a prescribed method, meaning OEC is not mandating that you use one particular method, just that you're using a root cause analysis process. And then you're going to include that information in the data summary box to identify any of those core issues that perhaps led to the non-compliance. And then once you agree as a team, then you'll include that information in your root cause box. And then, as we mentioned, then you'll prioritize each one of those areas of concern that you've marked yes, kind of in item 7. And then you're going to upload that document into the monitoring system. And we'll kind of walk you through that part. That's probably the trickiest part, I think, is just navigating that application. So as you're working through this process, sometimes it's helpful to have somebody type in responses as you move along, as you work through all of those guiding questions, especially if you're doing it in a large group. Sometimes that just kind of helps to facilitate kind of the meeting and keep things moving. You might already have structures in place where you do different types of data collection already. Considering that this is all around the evaluation process, think about, are there opportunities to collect this information where we might not necessarily have to create a totally different meeting? We talked about some of those key members. I think those were all the big things in terms of the SR, the self-review summary report. Lydia, was there anything that I missed or any questions so far from any of our district friends?
I don't think you missed anything. There's nothing in the chat yet. You guys don't even have to put it in the chat. You can just unmute. I think when we go back to the slides and talk about root cause, we'll be all caught up.
All right. So yeah, these thinking about root cause, many of your district teams already use, some form of method to really think about underlying causes or ways that we think about, what are those aspects of our evaluations that if we dug a little deeper could be contributing to our not meeting that timeline. So some of those questions that you work through, There might not be, you know, a lot of information that's going to help us kind of unpack or discover what those root causes are. But you're just going to answer those questions, you know, accordingly based on what you have in place as part of that system. But oftentimes there's more than one cause when we think about all the different moving parts that are part of our evaluations. And again, you know, many of you already use some of these different methods, fishbone, 5 whys, a combination of those two. So just know that if you need resources or tools around root cause, SST consultants will be there to kind of help support in that process too. So thinking about our improvement plan, it is, as you see it here, and as you use the link in your special education profile, you can start typing right into the document. You can see on the top, this plan would actually be used for other indicators if there were other findings. So sometimes this format looks familiar just because it's used for other findings, but there's a standard parts of the plan that are completed, such as the summary. So taking all that information from your self-review summary report, and then the reflection. If you were a district who had findings from previous years, the past 3 years, then we would provide a summary about our previous plan and perhaps some of those things that were working or not working. A long-term goal, you'll indicate anything beyond the profile timeline in terms of you know, a goal that will help to address the specific area of concern, as you will a short-term goal, which would be more specific to the profile timeline or within that profile timeline. You can see that first section of activities. They're specifying 1 to 3 activities are required for all districts, and you can see that they've or items 1 through 3 listed here: review of policies, practices, and procedures, investigation of records, and then training. Those are required. And then you have an opportunity. If you're an overachiever, and I know many of you are, there is an opportunity. If there's something outside of those 3 things that you think need to be built into your improvement plan, you have the opportunity to do that. Resources, you're including or outlining all of the different resources that you're going to need to kind of implement those activities that you've identified. You can see the next column identifies your timeline to complete activities. Doesn't necessarily have to be September 29th, but that is the end all be all date for submission of all of your evidence. So some of this information you can start working on and submitting prior to the September 29th once we work through that self-review summary report process. And then completion, you're going to include specific evidence that will be able to demonstrate that you've completed those activities, and then that's what will be uploaded into the monitoring application. Below, you'll see spots for signatures. The person who's going to be responsible for implementing or making sure that the plan is implemented, the superintendent, a sponsor for any of our community schools, as well as the signature from our state support team personnel who will be helping you through this process. We are relying on the help of our SST colleagues to kind of help us with the navigation of the self-review summary reports and the improvement plan. So in addition to Lydia, myself, and Tiffany, our other consultants will be supporting districts in this process. So Any questions on the improvement plan? It's pretty self-explanatory. There is a section in your manual that we've taken kind of a screenshot of here. With more general timelines, you'll see other indicators listed in here like disproportionality, but these are kind of the general instructions for completing your plan. They do talk about summarizing Part B, that reflection section, which we kind of already pointed out that that won't apply for all of you throughout the other aspects of the plan. And I don't think there's anything on here that we didn't touch. And Lydia, if I'm wrong, you can, there is a special note if there's a revision needed to the improvement plan. They do talk about it's going to have to be re-signed and resubmitted in its entirety. And then in the monitoring system, you'll see where that improvement plan has either been approved or not approved. Systemic improvement. We already said or referred to all of the evidence that you collect as part of your improvement plan that will be required to be uploaded into the monitoring application. And this slide just kind of gives you a snapshot of the application. So it would be the monitoring application. I'll see.
While Holly's pulling that up for the systemic improvement, I would just add that, remember, when we're doing these activities, we're not doing them solely for compliance. We really do want to see systemic improvement changes. So if you are updating your special ed procedures, or if this is going to be, especially with timely evaluations, we know that a lot of time that has depended on those interventions that go in with our gen ed teachers. It would be very important if you're updating those procedures to make sure that your administrators, your building administrators that might be serving as the district rep when we are going through this to get signatures and timeline and keep with the 60-day timeline, that they're aware of any new policy or checklist or anything that you put in place. So this, might be a discussion greater than just your special ed staff, that you're communicating with all of your district staff.
Thanks, Lydia. So this is the monitoring application, and as referred to earlier, that's probably one of the applications or one of the more cumbersome processes is just navigating the system and kind of knowing where to go and where to put things. And so when we're in here, go to special education programming, do the district search. I'm just going to use, well, of course that didn't, but when you do your search, it should isolate, and I probably had a typo in there, but I'm going to go to Rolling Hills. And then you can see where once you're in here, this is where you would add documents or import documents. And this is kind of where the upload occurs for those forms or your evidence that needs to be uploaded. And it's not a difficult system, but when you're not in it very often, it's just thinking about where you need to go. So that's the monitoring application. Oops. And another helpful tip is as you send things or import or upload things to the monitoring system, oftentimes OEC does not know, or they're not alerted when things are entered into the system. So Shauna Shrimke is typically the person at OEC for our region who we work with in terms of all things related to the profile. We always recommend sending her an email just indicating that you've uploaded something into that monitoring system. And then this is just a special note about systemic improvement. This was one of those pieces that were part of the your timeline. So you're going to download the systemic correction worksheet and follow the directions for any of those evaluations, those initial evals that were completed between these two due dates. That's another important due date to kind of have somewhere handy to kind of alert you. If there were 0 initial evaluations that had occurred during the time frame, then you're going to just upload a statement on letterhead that just indicated that you didn't have any initial evaluations occurring during that time frame. You're going to submit the correction worksheet again to the monitoring system, which we just had pulled up. And then you're going to select up to 5 records, so 5 SSIDs from the Indicator 11 Systemic Correction Worksheet. And then you're going to make sure that you label those records or those items with a corresponding number on the worksheet. And then you're going to submit all of that to the Secure Doc upload site. And you're not sending the entire ETR, just pieces. So you're going to make sure that you have the signed parental consent, the cover page that's been completed, the signature page, and then any documentation that you have for the use of any of the non-compliance codes of parental choice, parent refused consent, child's health, incarceration, or incorrect data. And they also clarify, they clarify what other forms of documentation that you might have. So that OP09 attempts to contact form, any types of notices that you would have, like email, letter, any types of phone records, documentation of multiple attempts and means to hold meetings. So they clarify that. And again, this is taken directly from the manual that you have access to from the profile. And then also in that manual, you'll kind of find this general kind of, tips for successful indicator review. So they talk about data reporting errors, just make sure that you're using the correct forms, and really outlining specifically in detail about the error. If you're working with that documents, that submit button, making sure that you're clicking complete the email and click send, the investigation of records. So it kind of outlines all of these different aspects. Unsigned records are not compliant. So making sure that all of our records are complete. Just trying to scroll through here to kind of pick out some of those big pieces. Making sure that your improvement plans have the necessary signatures. And going back to our comment earlier about if the improvement plan needs revised, then it has to be re-signed. And just making sure that if we have those systemic improvement areas that we've making sure that we're hitting those due dates. They do clarify that Google Forms, like let's say you were using a self-review summary report and you created a Google Doc, OEC is not able to access those documents. So you would have to transfer that information into another format. Links to documents, they're not accepted in terms of evidence for completed activities. So I know we rely a lot on that in our work, but they won't accept that. Here you have, of course, Lydia, myself, and Tiffany's direct email And then we also included a direct link to our staff directory. But as part of our next steps, our SST colleagues, consultants will be reaching out to you to kind of establish meeting times, formats to kind of go through the self-review summary report and the improvement plan process. Some other, next steps, again, I think just keeping track of all those due dates in your calendar, flagging all of those dates specifically, and then really thinking about your review team. Who do you want to include on there? Especially thinking about trying to address root cause, thinking about some of the questions that are listed within the self-review summary report that folks would be able to provide some good information that will help in our analyzing data. And then just being able to secure those forms within your profile and any needed resources that you will need to kind of assist in the process. And then thinking about those questions that are listed in the self-review summary report, kind of being prepared with maybe some of those additional data sources that you need that would maybe, I guess, help to move or keep your meeting moving forward instead of having to stop and gather data. So kind of front loading the process with some of those data pieces would be helpful. Are there any questions, any concerns?
I haven't seen any questions come through. I was just going to say on the last slide when Holly had our information up, when you get these slides, there's a link to our school, all of our consultants, the staff directory. I know some of you may not have met your school improvement consultant yet if the work hasn't been, you hadn't been part of that. So you might want to check your direct messages in the Zoom link as well, because we are very fortunate to have our director and many of our consultants on today that will be helping us support this work with our districts. So you may be meeting a new friend who's going to be helping you. Not that Holly and Tiffany and I won't, but they're there to help you build the capacity around this as well. Guys have any questions, comments?
Have you had an opportunity to dig through the self-review summary report topics and corresponding questions? I know with the late release and I don't know, the other hats that you wear and all of the things that you're faced with, you probably maybe haven't had an opportunity to do that. So this was like our last slide, but we want to make sure that we left some time for questions and reactions.
I haven't had a chance to look through much of it other than what I did the other day when I was with you guys. So I don't know. I guess I'll just see when I get in there. A lot of this stuff I have kind of in place just due to the review that I'm under anyway. So I think, what's one more thing? We'll just add this to it and see how it goes.
You probably, Ashley, have already addressed this, right? So
Yes.
Hopefully this will be good. And you did get to meet Sherry Lawrence. She was on earlier, but she's the school improvement consultant that's working directly with you. So you're always welcome to ask us questions, but I know that Sherry, since she's going to be coming and supporting your district anyway, that this is one of the things that she'll be more than happy to help you with.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I assume this is very similar to the process we went through for the alternate assessment stuff,
Yes.
right? When we had to, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, just a kind of a different lens.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that is it for me.
All right. Thank you, Ashley.
Yep. Thank you guys.
Take care.
You too.
Anybody else? Well, thank you for those of you who were able to break away and spend some time with us this afternoon. We just wanted to take the time to orient everyone to the documents, the process, making sure that you were able to access the things that you needed to address the required action. So we appreciate you being here.